भद्रं कर्णेभिः शृणुयाम देवा भद्रं पश्येमाक्षभिर्यजत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैस्तुष्टवागुंसस्तनूभिः व्यशेम देवहितं यदायुः स्वस्ति न इन्द्रो वृद्धश्रवाः स्वस्ति नः पूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्ति नस्तार्क्ष्यो अरिष्टनेमिः स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्दधातु ओम शांति शांति शांति. Om. O gods, may we hear auspicious words with our ears. While engaged in sacrifices, may we see auspicious things with our eyes. While praising the gods with steady limbs, may we enjoy a life that is beneficial to the gods. May Indra of ancient fame be auspicious to us. May the all-knowing Pusha, the god of the earth, be propitious to us. May Garuda, the destroyer of evil, be well disposed towards us. May Brihaspati ensure our welfare. Om, peace, peace, peace. So we had started the final section of the Mundaka Upanishad, and we started with a glorious mantra. Savedaitat paramam brahmadhama yatra vishwam nihitam bhati shubhram. The enlightened one has realized the transcendent Brahman. And where is the transcendent Brahman? Right here. Yatra vishwam nihitam bhati shubhram. Where this universe, which we are experiencing, we are all experiencing it right now. But for the enlightened one, it shines holy. In Gambhiranji's translation, beautiful translation, which shines holy. You see, because it is pervaded by that ultimate reality, because it's Brahman alone shining forth as this universe. It's no longer universe. It's no longer people and places and good and bad. It's one divinity through and through. And it's your own self. And those who adore, worship, follow such an enlightened sage, upasate purusham hyakama. So if they are qualified, if they give up worldly desires, shukram mativattante dhira, they will also attain enlightenment, and the result will be they will transcend the cycle of birth and death. All right. Now a question arises: why don't why don't we see people attaining this? If it's so glorious, why is it so difficult? And who will attain it? Who can attain it? Why is it difficult, and who can attain it? Two verses, two mantras, second and third. The second mantra is, what do we give up? And the third mantra is, what do we need? Second mantra. कामान्य कामयते मन्यमाना सकामभिर्जायते तत्र तत्र पर्याप्त कामस्य कृतात्मनस्तु इहैव सर्वे प्रविलीयन्ति कामाः. A translation from Swami Gambhirananda ji. He who covets desirable things while brooding on their virtues is born amidst those very surroundings, along with the desires. But for one who has got his wishes fulfilled and who is self-poised, all the longings vanish, even here. So, why is it difficult to attain enlightenment? Who can attain enlightenment? And if you do not, what happens? The consequence of not attaining enlightenment. Kamanya kamayate manyamana. So objects of desire could be sensual desire, sense pleasures, objects of lust and greed, or power or position. And some of them, some may be degrading and gross, some may be refined, like art and, or something like attaining to positions of power in organizations or in nations. So the pursuit of power and success, or the pursuit of straightforward greed and lust and all of those, kaman, and the objects which are desired, those are called kaman. Yah kamayate, those who desire them, those who hunger and thirst after these worldly objects. Why do we do so? It is because we find ourselves wanting, limited. We seek satisfaction and we are not satisfied. We are not happy the way we are. And we feel, here are those things. If I can add them to myself, I will be fulfilled. Clearly, when you are hungry, you need food. And when you are cold, you need shelter and warmth. You need education, a modicum of company. All of those are there. But our desires are multiplied far beyond the basic minimum. And that's because we seem to have a bottomless pit within ourselves. We need this validation from others. We need this fulfillment which we seek emotionally from others. We hunger like vampires, sucking emotional blood from others. We we hunger for sensual pleasure. We hunger for power over others, all seeming bottomless, limitless. Show me the a millionaire who doesn't want to be a billionaire. Show me the billionaire who doesn't want to add more billions to his already many, many billions, and so on. Show me the billionaire who doesn't want to be president. So this goes on. Kamanya kamayate. Why do we have this state? Is there any escape or any uh, solution to this problem? Yes. We have this state because actually it hides a great truth. We have somewhere the memory or the recognition of our own infinite nature. And because we actually are this infinite, we are immortal beings. We seek to live forever. We hunger for life all the time. But thing is, we seek it in these limited mortal bodies because we think this is who we are. I am limitless and I am this body equals to trying to living continuously, prolonging this limited biological existence. Similarly, I am joy and bliss itself. And so I must continuously experience my joyful, blissful nature. And how? Through, food and drink and merrymaking and relationships and in every possible way. Whatever the 1001 ways the world suggests to us, we must be happy. We are pleasure seekers. We are happiness seekers. We are knowledge seekers because we are consciousness itself. But so we seek to know and understand everything, whether it is a scientist probing the depths of the cosmos or the secrets of life itself, or it's just a person who reads the gossip columns in the newspaper nobody reads nowadays, on social media or something, seeking knowledge. We all want to know. We don't. What is it called? Fear of missing out, FOMO. Huh? So it hides a great truth about ourselves that we are infinite, and that's why we seek limitless satisfaction. We cannot be satisfied. Unfortunately, we are seeking it in the wrong place. And that's why we are disappointed again and again and again. What's the right place to seek it then? Vedanta has this dramatic thing. You're seeking the wrong place. Wrong place is outside. Right place is you yourself. Inside means you yourself, your real nature. Because we do not know our limitless real nature, we feel apurna, not complete, incomplete, and therefore comes desire. So from ignorance of our real nature comes desire. Shankaracharya's, one of his favorite phrases, avidya kama karma. Because of ignorance, because of not knowing our infinitude, own infinitude, we find ourselves as body, mind, and we feel we are limited. Because of thinking of ourselves as limited, then we try to become unlimited. Because remember, somewhere there's an intuition of our unlimited nature. And then we seek it in the body, through the body, in the world. We seek it there. Avidya, ignorance, leads to kama, desire. And desire leads to karma, desire prompted action. I must do things to fulfill my desires. And once we have desire prompted actions, what happens? They give rise to results, the results of karma. And the results are pleasure and pain. And this perpetuates the cycle. As we get the results, we want to avoid the pain, we want to get more of the pleasure, and we engage in further desire prompted action, and the results will keep coming, and we are pushed from one lifetime to another lifetime, because the results, we have to get the results of our own karma, and that gives rise to newer and newer embodiments. He'll talk about it. So kama bhir jayate tatra tatra. Because of those very results, because of that karma which has come from desire. Kama means because of being prompted by desire, that one is born there and there with those and those results. What does it mean? Whatever we desire and we work for it, we will actually get it. Swami Vivekananda says, do not desire anything because you will get it. That sounds great, right? The universe is a desire-fulfilling machine. It's our cosmic Amazon Prime. Whatever we want, throw out into the universe, we'll get it. Yes, but it's also a terrible machine. I remember reading Houston Smith, I mentioned this earlier. He says, one way of making sense of Hinduism is telling us, you can have whatever you want. But that opens up the great, great and primeval, ancient, even more ancient than ancient, primeval question. What do we want? And it's a terrible question. Remember reading all those stories in every culture of gods or demons or the jinn appearing from the magic lamp, whoever, every culture has these stories of supernatural powers appearing before you and asking, what do you want? And none of those stories end well. None of those stories end well. All of them will say what we want, and you get them and you get into trouble. None of those stories also have this, I don't want anything. That would have been interesting. I don't want anything. Vedanta says it's because we want these things, we will get them. And we prolong this limited existence, lifetime after lifetime, being whirled around and trying to fulfill ourselves from fill this bottomless empty well within ourselves from the limited world. When we studied economics, we always learned that economics is the science which tries to satisfy unlimited human wants with limited resources. So trying to satisfy the first definition we were taught in the first class in economics. It's impossible. Unlimited human wants with limited resources. And it goes on. So what will be the results? A kama bhir, prompted by these, we act, and the results of action lead us to being born again and again in different worlds, in different lifetimes. And these, remember, these desires are of two types. Shankaracharya will say, drishta, adrishta. Drishta means seen, money, success, sense pleasures. All these are seen. Family, children, these are seen, power. And adrishta is the unseen, promised by religion. So the Vedic religion, the Karma Kanda, which precedes the Upanishads, it promises a variety of heavens. Lead a pious life, perform the Vedic rituals, and after death, you will go to a heaven of your choice, whatever you have earned by your Vedic merit. So there also, what will you get? More pleasures, more limited happiness, which you will keep getting again and again. So you will be born tatra tatra, there and there. Where and where? Wherever you have imagined and worked for, not just imagined. Economics again, it's interesting. Demand, the next thing we were taught, demand. What is demand in economics? It's different from the demand which we have in day-to-day life. Demand is the desire for a thing and the ability to pay for it and the intention of paying for it, the willingness to pay for it. So desire for a thing. We have the desire for many, many, many things. Go ahead and fulfill it. Now you can, with one click, you can fulfill your desires. No, but it's expensive. It's not free. So I must have the ability to pay for it. That also is not enough. I have money and I have this desire, but I won't pay for it. I won't pay for it. Because it's too expensive. So that still does not constitute demand in the sense of economics. Economics demand is you must want it and you must have the ability to pay for it and you must be willing to pay for it. Then it becomes demand and the providers, the suppliers are interested in you in that case. Similarly, the Vedic thought was you must have a desire and the ability to work for it and the willingness to work for it. Then you will get the result of that desire. But that just perpetuates our limited existence. We will be born in this world and in other higher worlds later on. And everything will come to an end. And you come back again to this world to generate further karma. And that is only assuming we have good karma. If we have bad karma, then we will not get what we want. we will get suffering. We'll get kicks and blows in life, pain in life. Pleasure in life, what we want will be satisfied if we generate enough good karma. If we do not generate enough good karma, pain in life. And then we'll be born in lower worlds. He's not talking about that. He's talking about if you have good karma, this world, higher worlds, again back to this world. None of it is very spiritual. It's all very worldly or otherworldly, but still worldly. Then he says, Manyamana. How does this happen? Manyamana. Gambhiranji says, brooding over it, contemplating it. Bhagavad Gita, it talks about the second chapter. How do we come, spiritual seekers come to grief? How do we crash and burn? It says, Dhyayato Vishayan Pungsa, thinking about these desirable things of the world. That's what advertising wants to do, It wants to, to take up space in our mind. So thinking about it, then what happens? Sangasteshu pajayate, sangat sanjayate kama, kamat krodho vijayate, krodhat bhavati sammoha, sammohat smriti bhrangsha, smriti bhrangshat buddhinasho, buddhinashat pranashyati. Eightfold step, eightfold, like Ashtanga Yoga or Ashtanga Marga of Buddha or Ashtanga Yoga of Patanjali. There's an eightfold step to destruction, not to yoga or enlightenment. There's an eightfold step to destruction. What happens? This is what he says, Manyamana. First, it starts with what is occupying our minds, and think about it. And you think about it in a good sense, that this is nice. It would be nice to experience this. It would be nice to go there, nice to have this gadget, nice to see this movie, and so on and so forth. Then what happens? Next, Sangha, an attachment grows. We notice we tend to repeat those thoughts. So think about it. After some time, attachment, stickiness grows with those patterns of thinking, of wanting. Then sangat sanjayate kama, a desire. So desire of what kind? Demand in the economic sense. I want it. I'm willing to pay for it or work for it. I have the capacity to get it, and I am willing to pay for it or work for it. So kama, it becomes an expressed desire. When that desire is frustrated, suppose somebody or something prevents me from fulfilling my desire. Immediately, all desire frustrated leads to anger. Just about in every case when there is anger, some desire has been frustrated. So as far as selfish desires are concerned. So they'll lead to anger. Kama krodho vijayate. From desire comes anger. It's just the flip side of desire. And from anger, smriti bhrangsha. So our knowledge, here it means Vedantic knowledge, but it could just be common sense, good sense. It could just be my sense of my own standards and ethics, what I want, kind of person I think I am. Then smriti bhrangshat buddhinasha. From the destruction of the memory of our knowledge comes a failure of intellect, a failure of decision making. Then we take wrong decisions. We say the wrong thing, we do the wrong thing. How do we know it's wrong? Because we regret it later. Nobody has to implicate us. We implicate ourselves. Within days, months, or years, we'll say, I wish I had not said that. I wish I had not done that. I wish I could take it back. I could make those times of my life disappear. No, it will not disappear. So it is karma done, and it's a mistake. Buddhinashat pranashyati. So delusion from kama sanjayate, krodha, krodhat bhavati sammoha. From anger comes a fog of delusion. From a fog of delusion, our memory of understanding and memory are obscured. Loss of understanding comes wrong action, and from wrong action comes destruction. Destruction means we do not attain our goals, whether it's the highest spiritual goal of moksha or even other worldly goals. So manyamana, the root of it all is, what is our mind dwelling on? What is going on in our minds? In contrast, who will get liberation? Paryapta kamasya kritatmanastu ihaiva sarve pravilyanti kama. The one who is paryapta kama, who has given up all worldly desires and who is fulfilled by the self in the self. Or if you are devotee, is fulfilled in love of God. We do not need anything external to fulfill us.
Our engagement with the world is only solely, it could be just for the maintenance of the body, it could be just an expression of our enlightenment, or it could be for the welfare of others, but no particular selfish end is there. Vivekananda says, don't extend the tentacle of selfishness. Don't extend the tentacle of selfishness, that trying to draw in like a squid or an octopus something from the world. And like an octopus, we extend all 8 tentacles towards the world and trying to draw in things from the world. Don't do that. The paryapta kama, the one who is completely fulfilled the joy of the self, of the self, capital S. Kritatmanaha, the one who has attained enlightenment. Shankaracharya here gives a very nice definition of Kritatmana. Means the person, literally it means the person who has done what is meant to be done in life. The one who has fulfilled the goal of life. Shankaracharya gives a very precise Vedantic meaning of Kritatmana. What he says is, the lower self characterized by ignorance. So the lower self characterized by ignorance is, I am this person and I'm quite convinced of it, and that's the basis of all my thinking, speaking, and action. So that is characterized by ignorance. The person, the Kritatma, is the one who has shifted the identification from the lower self to the higher self. The higher self is, I am limitless consciousness. I am existence consciousness bliss. I am Brahman, expressing through this particular body and mind. Am I a physical being or a spiritual being? The one who has done what is to be done in life has shifted the identification from the physical being, the body-mind complex, to I am Chidananda Rupa Shivoham. I am of the nature of Shiva. I am of the nature of consciousness. I am of the nature of bliss. And this is my real nature. That person. So Shankaracharya's definition, Kritatmanaha avidya lakshanad apara rupad apaniyas swena parena rupena krita. So having changed the identification, shifted the identification away from this limited body mind to the already present limitless awareness by one's Vedantic knowledge. The lower self characterized by ignorance, and the higher self characterized by the enlightenment generated by the Vedantic knowledge. That person, ihaiva sarve pravilyanti kama. Here itself, important, this is a phrase which comes again and again in Upanishads and Bhagavad Gita. Ihaiva. Here itself, in this life, you can do it now, right now, in this life itself. You don't have to wait for going for after death, a post-mortem freedom or salvation, going to heaven. No, 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 right now. So ihaiva. And why not? It's already ours. So we have to recognize that this already present freedom, ihaiva, sarve pravilyante kamaha. All the desires are forever dissolved for this enlightened one. This ihaiva, this term, it refers to jivan mukti, freedom in this very life itself, the possibility of freedom in this very life itself, now and here, not hereafter, now and here. That's the beauty of Vedanta. What's ultimately it's talking about, the Brahman, ultimate Brahman of existence, consciousness, bliss, it's talking about this very world itself, our present life. The freedom and the joy and bliss it's talking about, it's possible here and now, in this life itself. That's the beauty of it. The process it undertakes also is based on what we are experiencing right now. This body, this mind, this seer and the seen, these 5 layers of the body-mind, physical, pranic, mental, intellectual, and the causal body. Here and now, this waking, this dreaming, this deep sleep, this is enough to lead us to a freedom which is available also here and now. Sarve pravilyante kama. Shankaracharya comments here, kama tajjanma hetu vinashat na jayante. What it means is, because these desires are the cause of birth and rebirth, once all these desires are dissolved because of enlightenment, there's no further birth. One is freed from the cycle of births and deaths. All right, so this mantra told us about why it is difficult to attain enlightenment, because of desires. What do we need to do to attain enlightenment? Back away from those worldly engagements and desires and attain enlightenment. What is the harm if we are not enlightened? He says here, Kamabhi jayate tatra tatra. There in those worlds, you will continue to be born again and again and again, and whirl around in this samsara, be dragged through samsara. Vivekananda says, thine only is the hand that holds the rope that drags thee on. Then let go thy hold, sannyasi board. Say Om Tat Sat Om. Now, the counterpart to this verse, to this mantra, is what is the positive side, the yearning for self-liberation? This one is the negative side. You give up. Sri Ramakrishna said, you see, two sides to his teaching. One is renunciation of lust and gold. The two fundamental things which ground us human beings as spiritual seekers in this samsara is lust and acquisition, what he called kamini kanchan, lust and gold. And that he was relentless about it, Sri Ramakrishna. You have to give that a step aside from it, because that's what absorbs most of our energies and time and thinking. So that you have to step aside from, at least mentally. The renunciation must be mental. And then the positive side. Sri Ramakrishna said, what is the one factor which enables you to realize God? What is the one thing that is needful? Sri Ramakrishna would say Vyakulata, an intense aspiration, desire, when the heart cries out for God, or at least stoke that fire, make it stronger and stronger. And they go together because it's the same energy which flows out towards the world in lust and gold, same energy which flows out towards the world in 100-fold streams of desire. If it is dammed up and blocked and then redirected, it will become one overwhelming love of God, as Vivekananda puts it, or a tremendous yearning for spiritual freedom. Vyakulata. That second one, Shankaracharya, the Upanishad itself, and Shankara also will comment on it. The intense desire for liberation. Mantra number 3. Nayamatma pravachanena labhyo na medhaya na bahuna shrutena yame vaisha vrinute tena labhya tasyesha atma vivrunute tanum swam. Another one of those very important Mundaka mantras. And the translation is, this self is not attained through study, nor through the intellect, nor through much hearing. The very self which this one, the seeker, seeks is attainable through that fact of seeking. This self of his own, the self of his reveals its own nature. All right, we have to unpack this one. The core message here is, the mantra says, none of these practices which we undertake, pravachana, pravachana, of course, is a word very common in Indian languages, which means a religious discourse, a spiritual discourse. Specifically, Shankaracharya here limits the meaning to Vedadhyayana, study and chanting of the Vedas. So lots of Vedic studies and chanting, regular chanting, which the traditional Brahmins used to do, some still do. Will that help you to become enlightened? No. The Americans would say, nope. Then Medhaya, a sharpened and purified intellect. Medha is intellect. And in Upanishads, it means a purified and sharpened intellect, which will enable us to grasp the subtle truths or the subtle teachings of the Upanishads. So Medha, will that help us? It's highly recommended across the Upanishads. He says, nope, that won't help. Na bahuna shrutena, not through much hearing of Vedanta talks. You hear loads and loads of YouTube lectures. Shruta means hearing, and you can extend it. The method of becoming enlightened, again and again, we have been told in Vedanta, is Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. So here Shravana is referred to, and of course, you follow it up with Manana and Nididhyasana. Hearing, contemplation, or reasoning, hearing, reasoning, and meditation. So that's supposed to give us enlightenment. He says, no, it won't. Really, what is at the core of it is, the way the language is given here is, Yame Vesha Vrinute Tena Labhya Tasyesha Atma Vrinute Tanum Swam. Who will attain to enlightenment? Who will get self-realization? It says the self reveals, Atman reveals itself to the one it chooses. The Atman reveals itself to that seeker whom the Atman chooses. Now, that language is good for the dualistic devotional interpretation, where it's talking about God. Who will get God realization, the vision of God? Whomever God gives is gracious upon by the grace of God, God chooses to whom. You can only pray and surrender and so on and so forth. But in the case of Vedanta, the self-knowledge, it becomes a little peculiar, this kind of you yourself will reveal yourself to whomever you choose. What does it mean? What it means, Shankaracharya explains. The self reveals itself to whom? Shankaracharya says here in his commentary, to the one who chooses the self. Upanishad says the self reveals itself to the one it chooses, the self chooses. The Atman reveals itself to the one the Atman chooses. Now the question is, whom will the Atman choose? And Shankaracharya says, the one who chooses the Atman. We have to make this decision, not once, continuously, to choose self-knowledge, self-realization, God realization, whatever we call it, above everything else, all the time, consistently. This is what I want. This is what Sri Ramakrishna would call Vyakulata, a tremendous thirst and eagerness for God realization. Now notice, two sides of it. One is the giving up side of it, which we saw in the earlier verse, giving up worldly desires. Otherwise, you'll be caught in the whirl of worldly desires and pulled down into worldliness. The second one we see here, the other side of the coin, is the intense yearning for God realization or self-realization. What does that mean? I choose self-realization. Then the self will reveal itself to me. The language is very interesting. Yamevesha vrinute. Whoever who chooses this self, to that one, the self will reveal itself. Self will reveal itself to whoever it chooses. Who will it choose? It will choose the one who chooses it. The Atman will choose the one who chooses the Atman. That means we must want the Atman, and it must be a genuine wanting, as revealed in our stepping away from worldliness. And it's not very difficult to see, because any human project, you want a great degree from an Ivy League college or something like that. And then you must make sacrifices for it. If you say, I am going to party and go on vacations and spend time with my friends and so on and so forth, and study maybe when if I have time, well, you will not get that degree. Look at the way the athletes train. They give up everything. They lead virtually monastic lives to before competing in their field of whatever sport they are in. So they give up in order to get something. And this is the rule everywhere, everywhere. Look at great scientists, artists, painters, writers, musicians. When they are in the creative mood or the research mood, they virtually become monk-like, because everything else drops away from their life. So they focus on what they want. So two sides to it. You can't have both. One cannot worship God and Mammon at the same time. Either you will worship the one and despise the other. So this is from the gospel. Jesus Christ says this. Or you will want one and neglect or despise the first one. There is a subtler, more technical point here. The technical point is, we cannot objectify the self and realize it. The technical point here is that the self is self-luminous. It reveals itself. Just like a light. The light reveals every other object in the room. But you don't need another light to reveal this light. The light reveals itself. All you need to do is look at the light. To whom will the light reveal itself? To the one who looks at the light. This is the technical point which is discussed as vritti vyapti and phala vyapti. I have mentioned this on other occasions. The pervasion by the mental modification, pervasion by reflected consciousness. Brief summary, and if you want details, you can find it in the text called Vedanta Sara. This is the epistemology of enlightenment. How do we get any kind of knowledge? Because of two things. One is vritti vyapti, pervasion by the mind. What does pervasion by the mind mean? You basically have to think about it. It has to come into our minds through, maybe through the eyes or ears. You see it, hear it, or you read about it. Basically, the mind has to objectify it. This is called vritti vyapti. There has to be a vritti, modification in the mind about the object of knowledge. That's one. Now, consciousness is reflected, the Atman is reflected in that vritti, in the mind. That reflected consciousness now illumines the content of that vritti. The consciousness reflected in the mind illumines the content. Whatever is presented in the mind is illumined by the consciousness reflected therein. That is called phala-vyapti, pervasion by reflected consciousness. So knowledge is two things, all knowledge. Vritti-vyapti, you must think about it. Phala-vyapti, it must be illumined by the reflected consciousness. Then only you get the feeling, I know it, I get it. Any kind of knowledge. Except enlightenment, self-knowledge. In self-knowledge, the mind has to be focused, has to think about, contemplate, bring into view the real nature of the self. It has to be turned upon itself into one's own real nature. How do you do that? Shravana, manana, nididhyasana. You hear about these things, you think about it, and then the reflected consciousness is not required to illumine pure consciousness. You don't need reflected light to illumine. You don't need moonlight to illumine sunlight. You don't need moonlight to illumine the sun. You need moonlight to illumine the earth at night. But when the sun rises, you don't need the moon to now reflect and shine on the sun and illumine the sun. The sun reveals itself. Similarly, when the mind gets it right, what the self is, when the clarity comes, that very clarity allows it to recognize the self for what it is, but without objectifying, because then it's flooded. It recognizes the light with which it is always flooded. We are ever immersed in the self, in limitless radiance, and that becomes clear. And that is called enlightenment. So for ordinary knowledge, vritti vyapti is necessary, phala vyapti is necessary. Pervasion by mind is necessary, pervasion by reflected consciousness is necessary. For enlightenment, self-realization, pervasion by mind is necessary. That's why shravana, manana, nididhyasana is necessary. Study of the text, thinking about it, meditating upon it necessary. But that does not reveal to us the Atman. The Atman reveals itself. So the deeper technical meaning of this is a clue to enlightenment. It says you have to choose the Atman, means continuously in our thought, in our understanding, in our reasoning, we must focus, stay with it. Will that reveal to us the Atman? No, the Atman will reveal itself because it's self-luminous. It does not require our mind to reveal. It does not require, in technical words, phala-vyapti, pervasion by reflected consciousness. This issue comes up in the Vedanta Sara in an interesting way. A question is raised towards the end of Vedanta Sara when you come to the epistemology or the psychology of enlightenment. How does enlightenment happen? Precisely what do you mean by self-realization? So the question is asked, what is the role of the mind in self-realization? And two quotations are given from the Upanishads. One says, Manasaivedam aptavyam. It is to be realized by the mind alone. Self-realization is done by the mind alone. Where else is self-realization? Can't be done by your knees or your kidney. It has to be done by the mind alone. The other quotation shows it cannot be done by the mind. Yan manasana manute, which is not, cannot be thought about or grasped by the mind. Now, how can both of them be right at the same time? One says, by the mind alone you will get enlightenment. The other one says, by the mind you cannot do it. The Atman cannot be thought of by the mind. Then what does it mean? These two together gives you a clue to what is enlightenment. And then there's a discussion of vritti vyapti and phala vyapti. Because vritti vyapti is necessary, so by the mind alone it can be realized. Because phala vyapti is not necessary, by the mind it cannot be realized. So in that sense. This is one of Shankaracharya's favorite quotes. It comes up again and again, that how he who chooses the Atman, to that one the Atman chooses. Devotees also, those who love God in devotional, dualistic religion, This is exactly what is meant by surrender, faith and surrender. I constantly choose God, then God chooses me. That allows the grace of God to operate. Now, a question might be, yes, that's all right, but how do you constantly choose God? It's not that easy. See, the wanting, Sri Ramakrishna says, Vyakulata, the desperate desire for God, like Sri Ramakrishna himself. He wept and cried for the vision of the Divine Mother. That's called Vyakulata. That's what the Upanishad is talking about. But the problem with that is, we all know, you cannot command somebody to want something. Either one wants it or one does not want it. It's like saying, eat, one can eat. If you ask me to eat, I can eat. But if you say, be hungry, how can I be hungry if I don't feel hunger? So one can behave lovingly, one can behave affectionately and caringly. But how can one feel affection, love, and care if one does not feel it internally? So you cannot command a desire. It has to be generated, it has to come from within. So that takes time. And the clues are given here that, that first of all, stepping away from worldly desires with effort. Yes, one might say that until one is enlightened, because the logic is because we do not know our Purnam nature, our infinite nature. That's why we feel limited, and that's why we have desires. And yet, because of these desires, we cannot come to enlightenment. We'll never know our Purnam nature or limitless nature. Isn't it a vicious circle? That because of our ignorance, we are trapped in the samsara. Because of we are trapped in samsara and desire, we cannot overcome ignorance we cannot get self-knowledge. But it starts with the teaching, the desire for self-knowledge. Notice, we already have the desire. That's an interesting thing. That's why we are present here. That's why we are taking all this trouble. That's why so many people are on the path, in whichever path they are. So the desire for self-knowledge, this desire for enlightenment, nirvana, moksha, is a very, very strong desire in all of us. It's already there. We have to fan it. We have to purify it. And the struggle for stepping back from worldliness and focusing more and more on the spiritual path. Sri Ramakrishna put it in very simple words. Vishaya virag ishwarya anurag. A dispassion for vishaya, for objects, sense objects, and an increasing yearning and love of God. The mind by itself is not an enemy. Purified of worldliness, it runs to God. Like a little child runs to its mother, the mind runs to God. It's the source of the mind itself. But it's because we have distorted the mind. We have put so much junk in the mind and perverted the mind. The mind is sick now, and therefore it cannot go to the divine. We need to purify it and give it treatment. Vishaya Birag, Ishwarya Anurag. Sri Ramakrishna also gives the answer. Simple, such simple answer. Everybody can understand without even studying the Upanishads. He says, the more you go towards these, the more the West remains behind. So how do I give up these desires? He says, you don't have to. Don't struggle there. Struggle rather in the positive direction. Move towards God. Study, meditate, pray, serve. Don't struggle with the negativities. The more and more we fill up our time and energy with divinity, the more the worldliness will drop away, will slip away. One monk in the Himalayas, he put it this way. If you are constantly surrounded by bad company, criminals and cheats and thieves, instead of fighting against them, it's very difficult. They'll beat you up. Instead of fighting against them, hang out with the cops. Make friends with the cops and hang out with them. So the criminals won't approach you. They'll step back. They will slowly slide away from you. So that way, go more towards God. The worldliness will drop away slowly. In one sense, it's direct. The reality is available right now. In another sense, it's long and convoluted because of the complications which we have made in our own mind. It's difficult to cleanse the mind so easily. Now, one more point here before we move on. See, pravachana, Vedic study or religious talks, Meda, the purified and sharpened intellect, and Shruta, that means hearing, Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasan. He's not knocking them. He's not criticizing them. He says all of them are necessary. But by themselves, they won't work unless The crucial factor is intense yearning for self-realization and a dispassion for the world. That's the engine. Otherwise, it'll all be half-hearted. It'll all be half-hearted. And we'll complain it doesn't work. We'll move forward 2 steps and slide back 1 step. So that fierce moving forward towards God, that comes when there's an intense renunciation for the world and yearning for God. Yes, then Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana, they become powerful. The Medha, the purified and sharpened intellect, that becomes useful then. That will work. And Pravachana, even the simplest of religious teachings, we will take it to heart. Otherwise, Shankaracharya himself says, in the same class, when you teach Vedanta, a few understand what was taught, a few half understand it, some partly and partly not, and a few understand completely the opposite meaning of what was taught. And a few don't even know, they don't remember. And what was taught just came this way and went out that way. That's because of lack of yearning. If we really want it, we'll be ever so attentive, ever so full of faith and conviction. We'll always feel, yes, yes. Josephine MacLeod, disciple of Swami Vivekananda. Disciple is, she was, but she just refused to call herself a disciple. She said, I'm a friend of Vivekananda. And she writes about Vivekananda. The first time I heard Vivekananda speak, it was truth. The second time I heard him speak, it was truth. And every time I heard him speak, it was truth. It speaks to you directly. That's because already we are ready. To the skeptic, it won't speak directly. To the faint, to the person who is whose aspiration is faint, it will not speak so directly. Yes, but I have 10 more questions. But the seeker who is turned away from the world and intensely wants this will say, yes, this is what I wanted. And I'm going to hold on to this and move forward. In this life itself, I will attain enlightenment. One more. This is also a follow-up on the third mantra. Mantra number 4. Nayamatma balahine labhyo nacha pramadat tapaso vapyalingat etairupayer yatate yastu vidwan tasyeshatma vishate brahmadhama. Further instructions. Number 4. Translation. This self is not attained by one devoid of strength, nor through delusion, nor through knowledge unassociated with monasticism. But the self of that knower who strives through these means, it enters into the abode that is Brahman. So 3 powerful practices have been prescribed here. These are advanced practices, by the way. We'll see. Self-realization is not possible for the weak, for those devoid of strength. Balahine labhya. Here, the meaning of bala, strength, is, it can cover a whole spectrum. Remember, even physical strength, emotional strength, intellectual strength, moral strength, then only spiritual strength. That's why Vivekananda emphasized all of it. That's the meaning of Vivekananda's famous exhortation to play football. You'll be closer to heaven by playing football rather than by reading the Gita. And then he explains that he knows, I know where the shoe pinches. It's through a vigorous body, it's through mental maturity, emotional strength, and intellectual conviction. All these strengths are necessary, moral strength. But above all of them comes, Shankaracharya explains, Atmanishtha janita virya hinena. Balahina means devoid of strength, means devoid of the strength which comes by living your life in accordance with the knowledge of the Atman. By living your life in accordance with what we know. We already know a lot. The problem is we don't abide by what we know. I love this saying. It was probably Plato who said it. To know the good is to do the good. To know the good is to be good. And we often immediately we think, no, that's not right. We all know what's good, but it's so difficult to be good. Yes, it's only because our minds are polluted and our will is weak. We know something is right, We agree with it, but we can't do it. As the poet Eliot said, between the intention and the act falls the shadow. Between the intention and the act falls the shadow. I think it's Eliot. And the shadow is our own imperfect natures. So what the Greek philosopher meant was, if we had perfected ourselves, then what we know to be right, we would do it. There wouldn't be any hesitation. There wouldn't be any faltering. And that I see in the lives of the saints. What they know to be right, they execute it. What they understand, they follow it in their own lives. Sri Ramakrishna said it's a very, very powerful practice. One of the greatest things he admired was, he said, mon mukh ek kara, making your tongue and the mind the same. What you say is what you are. What you are is what you say. Don't claim anything more than what you are, and don't make a division between what we think internally and what we say and do externally. We just deprive ourselves of most of our power by doing that. Now he says, Atmanishtha Janita Virya, the vigor, the power that comes of standing on the Atman. Standing on the Atman means knowing that I am this limitless existence consciousness place. Now think, what does that mean? Even before self-realization, once we have clarity, once these non-dual teachings have made sense to us and we begin to see, yes, that makes sense. Yes, this is right. Then confront the issues that life throws up. Then you'll realize why this Vivekananda called this life a gymnasium. Then it will truly become a spiritual gymnasium. Everything will help in our spiritual progress then. A little physical weakness, a little pain there, and a little ache there. What is it to me? I am the limitless consciousness. Because of me, this body, mind is illumined. It has its own existence because of me. It does not exist apart from me. What can a little pain or an ache do to me, the immortal consciousness or Brahman? And so, what you are doing, you are elevating the mind. Atman is already there. The mind which is sunk in body awareness or body consciousness, you're elevating it to Atman consciousness. Again and again, Sri Ramakrishna's words, the direct disciples like Swami Turiyananda and others in their elder years, as disease came, old age came, and death came near, they repeat this, oh my mind, let the body know its pain, let the body know its suffering or pain. You, my mind, remain in peace and joy. Shorir jane, rog jane, shorir jane, mon tu anande thak. Let the mind remain in happiness. Now, what does that mean? How will the mind remain happily in peace in the midst of disease and old age and problems? It's only in this, centered in self-knowledge, that I am the Atman. Try it when emotional shocks come, when the ups and downs of life come. Can we maintain mental serenity? Atman is serene anyway. Atman is pure consciousness. Even if I get tremendously upset, the self remains the same anyway. But can I prevent getting tremendously upset? Swami Premeshanji asks a novice, what is the practice for a monk? So the novice says, it should be humble, you should put up with whatever the world throws at you. And Premeshanji says, no, that's cowardice. That's cowardice. You should go ahead and do whatever is right as a monk. But he says, not to be upset. That's the practice. Don't let the world make you upset. And that's not easy at all. The world is making us upset all the time, trying in 100 different ways. And trying not to get upset on the basis of what? Not a forced kind of robotic calmness, on the basis of self-knowledge. Chidananda Rupa Shivoham. I am that, not by repeating it mechanically, by seeing it's a fact. Why should I be upset? Why should I be upset? Don't let the world upset your mind. Don't let anything disturb your serenity. That's a tremendous practice. You might say it's easier said than done. That's why it's a practice. That's why Shankaracharya says it's strength. Without this strength, he says, you cannot have self-realization. This is before self-realization. Another thing, there's a term nowadays, spiritual bypassing. Spiritual bypassing. It seems some people use some kind of spiritual logic. I am the Atman, Brahman, I'm pure consciousness, and I don't confront my problems. Suppose I have personality problems, moral failings, or problems from the world outside. I choose to avoid it, hide my head in the sand like an ostrich, claiming to be Brahman. No, that is spiritual bypassing. That is not what Advaita recommends. See here. It says, na balahinena. One must have strength. One must have strength. And to face whatever life throws at us. And be of good cheer as the Atman, as Brahman. What is the problem for me? Then I can deal with that without becoming upset. I can deal with that much more effectively, much more wisely. Otherwise, when we deal with things, respond to things from a position of being upset, fearful, scared, we usually think, say, and do the wrong things. We don't act at our potential. We don't act with the limit of, at the peak of our wisdom. Then he says, the second practice, na pramadat. Inadvertence, carelessness. There's an ancient Indian saying, pramado vai mrityuhu. Lack of mindfulness is death. So, apramada is mindfulness. Mindlessness, heedlessness is death, especially here. Keep the mind on Vedanta. Don't let it slip from Vedanta. There is a saying common among monks, asupte amrite kalam nait Vedanta chintaya. Until you fall asleep and until you die, spend your time in Vedantic thought. Keep reading, thinking continuously about these things, and until you fall asleep, which is pretty easy. When you're thinking too much about Vedanta, you fall asleep. All right, that's all right, you fall asleep. But then when you wake up, start thinking about Vedanta again. And until, how long will I have to do this? Until death, until the end of this life. That's the spirit. If you become a monk, what will you do? You'll do that. That's why you have become a monk for. One Swami wrote to the Holy Mother saying that I'm in Rishikesh and meditating. I've repeated the mantra so many thousands and thousands of times, but the Lord has not revealed himself to me. And she wrote back saying two things. She was a little annoyed by that. She used to dictate her letters. Write back to him that, number one, is the Lord a sack of potatoes that you can purchase him with your spiritual practice? The Lord will reveal himself to you. See, the Lord reveals himself to the one whom he chooses. The Atman reveals itself to the one whom it chooses. Now, that's one. The second thing she said was, he has become a monk. If he will not do japa, meditation and japa, repeat the mantra, what will he do? What's the big credit? I've done a lot of japa and meditation. So what's the big credit? That's what you're going to do. Keep doing it. Shankaracharya wrote, it's a little hymn very popular among monks. Vedanta vakyeshu sadaramanta bhikshanna matrena chatushtimanta aharnisham brahma sukhe ramanta kaupinavanta aharnisham brahma sukhe charanta kaupinavanta khalubhagyavanta. This is called 5 verses on the loincloth, the wearer of the loincloth. This is a monk, the wandering monk. What does it mean? Vedanta vakyeshu sadaramanta, continuously dwelling, enjoying Vedanta vakya, the Vedantic sentences, dwelling on the Vedantic sentences, ever. Then the second one, Bhikshanna matrena chatushti mantra, completely satisfied with whatever chance may bring. The alms, the food got from alms. Bhikshanna, the food got from alms. Vivekananda said, the sky thy roof, the grass thy bed, food what chance may bring. Well cooked or ill, judge not. No food or drink can taint that noble self which knows itself. So, Bhikshanna matrena chatushti mantra, completely satisfied by whatever food you get by begging. So, Swami Bhuteshananda Ji Maharaj, the 12th president of our order, he spent a lot of time in the Himalayas as in seclusion and meditation, and go for begging for food. He would say the Himalayan monks have a saying among themselves, about food. Kabhi ghee ghana to kabhi mutti bhar chana or kabhi wo bhi mana. What does that mean? Sometimes you get very rich food made in ghee, in the clarified butter. Sometimes you get only a handful of gram. Mutti bhar chana. And sometimes you don't even get that. Kabhi ghee ghana, to kabhi mutti bhar chana, or kabhi wo bhi mana. And you should be serene in all three. You should be serene in all three. Difficult, especially if you're hungry, but still you have to, that's the practice. Kopi navanta kalu bhagyavanta. Brahma sukhe aharnisham ramanta. Ever immersed in the bliss of Brahman, in day and night immersed in the bliss of Brahman. Fortunate indeed is the wearer of the loincloth. Kopi navanta kalu bhagyavanta. Like these 5 verses are there. Wonderful. Most monks, they repeat them, if not regularly, once in a while. So he says next. So first is never forget. First is, of course, strength. Derive strength from living these truths. Try to live accordingly. Don't let your mind be upset. Second, don't forget. Keep your mind on Vedanta. Until you fall asleep, until you die, let the mind dwell on Vedanta. Not just before falling asleep or just before dying. That's an excuse. Then, so this is na pramada, without any inadvertence. Don't let the world seep into you. Then tapaso vapya lingat. So tapas means austerity. Linga means here monasticism. Shankaracharya says becoming a formally becoming a monk. What the Upanishad means, of course, is that the renunciation from the mind, which was already said earlier, a strong renunciation of worldliness, worldly pursuit. What Sri Ramakrishna said, pursuit of lust and gold. Strong renunciation from the mind. Those are not my goals anymore. Artha and kama, pleasure seeking and worldly success. They will come to you. They will come to you. If you are in samsara, they will come to you. But those are not your goals. We are not in samsara to pursue them. And Shankaracharya, he goes further and he says, the linga, the word linga here literally means sign. So the sign is this cloth, the formal cloth of the monastic. That means formally becoming a monk. But it basically means the internal monastic attitude. If formally becoming a monk led to enlightenment, then everybody who became a monk would become enlightened, and nobody who did not become a monk would become enlightened. But we see throughout history until today, there are many among monks who do not become enlightened, and there are many who are not monks who do become enlightened. So it's because so is it wrong, or is this teaching wrong? No. What is implied here is the inner attitude, renunciation from the heart of lust and gold. That is what is meant by this inner monasticism or inner renunciation. That one has to be monk-like inside. Shankaracharya, of course, is very pro-monk. So he says, no, externally also. If you want to become enlightened, you study this and then live life according to the Vedantic teachings. Never be inadvertent about Vedanta. Keep your mind continuously, 24/7. This is a word she would have liked. Popular in America, Silicon Valley, 24/7. But here 24/7, they want to keep you engaged in job. 24/7 monastic life is, or spiritual life. Keep your mind on Vedanta. The austerities one must practice, tapasya, should be along with monasticism, or inner renunciation and external austerity. Here austerity, Shankaracharya defines as jnana, the practice of shravana, manana, nididhyasana. Engage yourself in Vedantic study, reasoning, and meditation after taking monastic vows. So this is Shankaracharya's own interpretation. People do that. Even now, people are doing that. This Shivaratri, traditionally in India, on Shivaratri night, the new monks are initiated every year in Banaras and Haridwar and other places also. A young man I knew, he wrote to me just a few days ago saying that, I'm sorry I did not tell you this earlier. Very highly qualified young man, was working in the United States. He says, on an impulse, I went off to India, and in Banaras this year on Shivaratri by such and such Swami. I was initiated into sannyasa, and now I'm off. He told me the name of a very famous mountain where he is going to spend the rest of his life in study and contemplation. So this is formally becoming a monk and following the path of self-knowledge. Shankaracharya says, Tapoatra jnanam Lingam sannyasa. Tapasya, or austerity here means specifically the austerity of Shravana, Manana, and Jidhyasana. Stick to that and becoming a formal monk. Tasya atma vishate brahmadhama. Though the Vidwan, the Vedantic student who seeks self-realization by these means, living on the Vedantic truth, never letting the mind wander away from Vedantic contemplation. Where is the time to be unhappy? Where is the time to grumble? Where is the time to fight with others? Where is the time to be greedy and try out this and that, be distracted by the world? Shankaracharya gives a list of things to watch out for. Laukika putra pashwadi vishaya sanga nimitta pramadat. Being diverted by main the sources of diversion. Shankaracharya says, watch out for children, one, and cows. That means your animals. In New York, it won't be cows, it will be probably be dogs. So people are diverted by, so you have people, other people in your life, spouse and children, or the dog, or if you were in ancient India, the cows, you're very worried about your cows. That's basically your wealth in ancient India. Here you'd be worried about the dog or this, your Wall Street, the stock market portfolio, what's going up and what's going down. That is called pramada, diversion. Stay with Vedanta. Such a person, Atma Vishate Brahmadhama. For that person, the self enters into the abode of Brahman. Literally, what it means is you realize you are Brahman. The self is Brahman. I am Brahman. Existence, consciousness, bliss, realization comes. This is the background to it. All right. Let me just look at the comments. There is a very nice cartoon, the jinn has come. You have just, what does it say? You hear just one more wish. Oh, do you want a belly rub? The dog, do you want a belly rub? Are you sure you want that? But that's our condition. We ask for the silliest of things. And the jinn is there. Vivekananda says the jinn is our mind. It's a machinery provided to us by God. It will give us whatever we want. It's a virtual reality machine, most powerful in the universe. And it will give us whatever we want in time as we put into it, demand, desire, ability to work for it, and the willingness to work for it. We will get it. It will come. The universe will give it back to us, whatever we want. And it will be trouble. That much is guaranteed. Sri Ram says, since desirelessness will make us lifeless, the need to divinize all desires into mokshatvam. Yes, desirelessness will never exist by itself. A vacuum cannot exist. So Vivekananda says, give up all these little desires into one great love of God or intense desire for self-knowledge or realization. Then Sanket says, how to give up desire and yet keep a cheerful outlook. When you give up desire, then you will keep a cheerful outlook. Try it. It's only desire which gives us a long face. The scowl on our face is because of desire. Either we want things and we are not getting it, therefore long face, or we got what we wanted and it's, buyer's regret, they call it. Buyer's regret. You have got it and you don't like it anymore. That's why. No, I really mean it. That once I remember we as novices, we had just joined the order and we were brahmacharis in the ashram in Deoghar. And revered Swami Suhitanandaji Maharaj, who is now the vice president of our order. He was the head of the ashram and we were all trained under him. Now we were a merry bunch. We would laugh and, have a lot of fun as the young monks. And there was a gentleman who took exception to this. You're supposed to be serious. You're monks. You're going to be monks or you're under training. Why so much laughter? And then Swami Suhitananda scolded this gentleman. He said, scolded means said, they don't have wives and children. If they won't laugh, who will laugh? He said. So they are not in samsara. That's what it means. It's not a aspersion on wives. It could just as well apply to husbands. So you don't have a spouse and children. You are not in samsara. If these people will not laugh, who will laugh? So he said that sharply. But then, of course, he took us aside and cautioned us. He said, endless hilarity, this kind of, uh, he says it weakens the mind. It makes the mind light and unable to settle down on deep and profound subjects. So yes, be happy, but not this kind of uproarious, merriment. One thing I've seen, you give up these desires, you become happy like children. That's the amazing thing about it. When your desires are satisfied, how to keep your mind on God, right? It's only the one who seeks desires, unsatisfied desires, will think about God. Please give me this, please give me that. And when God gives us this or that, we won't think about God. That's the worldly mind. The spiritual mind will be troubled by the presence of desires. The presence of desires will take the mind away from God. When you give up the desires, the mind will happily dwell on God. That's the sign of the spiritual mind. Yesterday we were reading very beautiful section in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. There is a Kirtan singer who beautifully thinks about Radha and Krishna, and Sri Ramakrishna is very happy. And he goes into ecstasies and samadhis. Afterwards, the Kirtan singer, so touching. What he asks for from Sri Ramakrishna, he bows down to Sri Ramakrishna. He says, it's written there with folded hands. He says, please remove my worldliness. He says, please remove my world. So that's a real spiritual seeker. He knows where it's getting stuck. He doesn't say, recommend me some nice YouTube videos, some more knowledge. No, that's there. We know all this. Whether it's devotion, he's a devotee of Krishna and Radha. Good. All that is there. What is stopping him, he knows, is my worldliness. Please remove my worldliness. Shanli says, what are the attributes of an enlightened person? Yes, Gita, 2nd chapter, Sthita Prajna, the characteristics of the enlightened one, from verse number 55, chapter 2, 55 onwards till the end of the chapter, 55, chapter 2, verse 55 to verse 72. So, one of the finest sections of the Bhagavad Gita. Characteristics of the enlightened one. Exactly what you have asked is what Arjuna asks Krishna. And by the way, that question which was asked earlier, that if you give up desires, how will you be happy, is not a light question. It's an important question, because that's what is the foundation of worldly life. Everything in samsara is predicated on that. I'll have many desires and then I'll try to fulfill them, and that's life. And psychologists will tell you that's a healthy way to be. It's a healthy way to be. But Vedanta tells you no, it's not. It's healthy. It's better than being morbid. It's better than being sick, depressed. You up and about and engaged with the life. But higher than that is to be up and about and engaged in spiritual life, not with worldliness. So Shankaracharya asked this question in that 56th verse, I think, of the Bhagavad Gita, when Krishna is explaining to Arjuna, telling Arjuna what are the characteristics of the enlightened one. Shankaracharya says, suppose you give up all desires. Krishna says, giving up all the desires which are in the heart. Give up all desires. Then you'll be crazy. He literally says, unmattasya eva prasanga. The contingency arises, such a person will be like a mad person, life, as you said, lifeless, listless. And he says, no, because then that heart is filled with the bliss of Brahman. It's because we have no taste of that. We think, if I give up these, what will be living? It will be boring. It won't be boring. For the first time, you'll get, first of all, a great sense of relief. Next, you'll get a great abiding sense of peace. And then a pure joy, limitless, will come to you. Rick says, and the yearning for self-realization inclines one towards spiritual practice, study, etc. So it's not that these things are not exactly not conditioned. They are symptoms of something more fundamental. You won't do them unless you have the yearning. Exactly. We are doing that because we have the yearning. And as I mentioned earlier, all of those things are necessary. Study and inquiry, and the yearning will make us do those things anyway. And the yearning, it intensifies those practices. Otherwise, it will be half-hearted. Yes, Swampreet.
Maharaj, my question is, if the world is manifestation of the same, like each and everything is manifestation of the same consciousness, how is the drashta, the one who is seeing, different from the drishya? Because the drishya, if the drashta exists without the drishya, how can we say that drishya exists without the drashta? Because for two things to be different, they need to independently exist.
Correct.
So
Good point. So how do you think that the world is different from you? We always say make a distinction between the seer and the seen, between self and the not self. But this world is a manifestation of this one consciousness which we are. So how is it different from us? It's your own manifest. Are your dreams different from you? They are not. They are the same mind. Correct. But to come to that point, we must draw an artificial line. What is the artificial line? Between self and not self. See, we have already drawn this line in an erroneous way. Self is I am, this is the self. And everything outside this is not self. And this is causing samsara for us. This is what Shankaracharya says, the lower self constituted by ignorance. So one must make the shift, the identification of the lower self constituted by ignorance to our real self, which is pointed to by knowledge. In order to do that, in between is the process. The process is twofold. One is with regard to oneself, one must have the process of self and not self. Ultimately, there is no not self. But first of all, self and not self. Atma, Anatma, Vichara. An inquiry into what I truly am, what I am not. Then we'll realize what I thought I was. The root of this body embodiment, the sense of body identification, which is the source of all our problems, that will go away, or at least that will be weakened. I'll realize I am not the body. It's an appearance. It's distinct from me. I am the seer. This is the seen. I am the drashta. This is the drishya. I am pancha kosha vilakshana atma. I am the consciousness which is distinct from the 5 material layers of the human personality. I am avasthatraya sakshi atma. I am the witness of the 3 states which are distinct from me: waking, dreaming, deep sleep. Once you have done that, next we will see that they are all nothing but me. It's my radiance which arises as the waking, dreaming, deep sleep, which arises as the physical, vital, mental, intellectual, and causal sheets, which arises as the drishya. The second thing we must do is with the external world. This is with regard to ourselves. The second inquiry is with the external world. Satya mithya, true and false. So existence consciousness bliss is true. The world of name and form is false. That will point, what will that do? That will point that it show us that tables and chairs are not the ultimate reality. Brahman is the ultimate reality. Tables and chairs are manifestations of that Brahman. Then we will see that these tables and chairs are also nothing but Brahman. Brahman alone exists. The Mundaka Upanishad has shown us that also. So yes, there's a good question. First, a distinction is drawn in order to capture the reality or understand the reality. Once the reality is understood, we see that we can now remove the distinction. Sonali says, so mumukshutvam or Vyakulata seems to be the most important qualification. Yes, 2 things. On one side, Vairagya, dispassion, the other side, Vyakulata. Parul says, enlightenment will come through Vitti Vyapti, not through Phala Vyapti. In mind, not in reflected consciousness. And today you explain comes to one who seeks it. Yes. The one who seeks it, seeking it is focusing the mind on Brahman, right? It's the same thing. Oh, you have said that. You started explaining as soon as I asked. Yes, that's right. Priyanka says, if I understand correctly, upon enlightenment, we get the knowledge of the essence of everything, not the details. Yes. If there's a desire of the intellect to know the details of everything, it scatters the mind to gather information about various things. Yes, like science, history, world affairs, etc. The lower knowledge in 114. What is the way to transcend this desire? It seems like a futile attempt embedded in knowing the dance of names and forms. Yes, the way to give up this desire is to first focus on the realization of the self, that I am the witness consciousness, I am Brahman. Focus on Shravana, Manana, and Nididhyasana. Remember, the desire to know things in the world is not wrong in itself. It's a much better, any desire to know comes from Sattva Guna. The mind, the Sattvic mind is the knowledge is a function of the Sattvic mind. It's a bondage, no doubt, but it's a bondage of the Sattvic mind. If you suppose there's a person, a spiritual seeker, who's a scholar, who's a researcher, and says that, Oh, so my scholarship and research is a bondage, is an obstacle to my self-realization. I'll stop. I will drop out of my PhD program, and I'm going to meditate and meditate in a cave. And suppose you can't do that. You'll realize in pretty short order that the mind will not accept it. Then one can slip to an even lower state of existence. So it's better to continue in the pursuit of external knowledge also, if that is your vocation, and do your spiritual practices. Do it together. Otherwise, one may slip lower also. When the great yearning comes from God for God realization, you will toss away at least temporarily, all other avenues of exploration or knowledge seeking, temporarily. And after you make the breakthrough, you realize you are Brahman, then one may go back to being a scientist or a scholar. That also might be there as an expression of your self-realization. Remember, Sri Ramakrishna intensely avoided all kinds of worldly learning, book learning he used to call it. And Vivekananda was deeply scholarly. Most of the direct disciples, Vivekananda, Abhedananda, they're deeply scholarly. But their scholarship was, they didn't think that is the path to self-realization. That was something helpful for them, also in their sadhana, but also as a part of their work afterwards. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, to kill oneself, remember, this is not an instruction for suicide, by the way. To kill oneself, one needs a nail. But to kill the other, you need a sword and a shield. So to convince oneself, a little bit of instruction is enough. But to convince others, you need a tremendous array of knowledge of different philosophies, ideas, psychology, philosophy, all of that. It helps. Kiran says, when it comes to worldly desires, one reaches the goal when they're completely focused on the goal, or when they let it go and magically they get the desired results. Is this applicable to enlightenment as well, where the seeker should have intense focus on the goal of enlightenment, yet let go of the result at some point? Yes, that's true. Focused on that, and then focus on the means, not the goal. So means is your Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana, and keep it there. So notice, the teacher, the monk is always dwelling on Vedantic teachings, not on the goal. When will I be Jivan Mukta? When will I become Brahman? It doesn't keep thinking about that. That will never lead to anything good. Think about the teaching, that I am not the body and the mind. I am this witness consciousness. And notice it in your own experience. It's a fact that I am the witness consciousness. How did I never notice it earlier? Stay with it. Abhijit says, Vivarana school stresses on the importance, Shravana, Bhamati on the importance of Nididhyasana. Does mantra 323 disagree with both? No. So Shravana, so not importance of Shravana, the Vivarana sub-school of Advaita Vedanta and the Bhamati sub-school of Advaita Vedanta, the question there is, what leads to enlightenment? Does hearing lead to enlightenment or meditation lead to enlightenment? Three components of practice: Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. Hearing, reasoning, and meditation. Which one leads to enlightenment? According to the Vivarana school, to which we monks we subscribe, it says Shravana is the important one. The knowledge comes from hearing. What does reasoning do, and what does meditation do? It removes obstacles to hearing. So if we have doubts, we have heard, but we have doubts, and we are not getting knowledge. The doubts are removed by reasoning. If we have heard, but we have got contrary tendencies, we are behaving as if we are body and mind, then meditation on what you have heard and reasoned out, that will remove the contrary tendencies. And you will realize you are Brahman. And then you will also note that this realization came from the original hearing. It did not come from logic, or did not even come from meditation. Meditation and logic just remove the problems. But the original teaching itself leads to enlightenment. That's Vivarana's position, and that's our position, basically. There's another school, very powerful school, Bhamati school, which says that, no. Hearing, you will just get knowledge of what Vedanta wants to teach you. Then reasoning, Manana, you will get clarity about that knowledge. So you know what the books are telling you, what the Swami is telling you, you reason it through, then you will understand it. First, you heard that, you've got the information, now you've understood it. Now you need to stay with it, with what you have understood, with your clarity, until you can claim it's a living reality, that living reality part of it, until you can express it in day-to-day life. That requires long, prolonged non-dual meditation. When I said, don't let the mind be upset by the world, you'll see it's not at all easy. You'll get upset moment to moment. That requires prolonged non-dual meditation. And the Bhamati says, see, this is what is enlightenment. Both have their perspectives. This one is something else. It's telling you the importance of intense yearning, vyakulata, mumukshutvam, intense desire for freedom, and the importance of desirelessness about the world. These two things are being told by mantra number 2 and 3. With the interpretation of not objectifying truth, is this agreeing with the Shunyavad school, which says objectification of truth is empty? Yes, in that sense, in a very technical sense. Oh, Apala has given us here Eliot's Hollow Men. Thank you so much. Between the idea and the reality, between motion and act, falls the shadow. Conception and creation, emotion and response, falls the shadow. Desire and the spasm, potency and the existence, essence and the descent, falls the shadow. Hollow Men. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.